Did you know that some of America's most revered presidents owned slaves? It's a stark reminder that history is often more complicated than it appears. Join us as we explore the lives of U.S. presidents who owned slaves, revealing the contradictions of their legacies. George Washington, 1732 to 1799. George Washington, revered as the father of the United States, held a deeply complex relationship with slavery. As a young man, Washington inherited his first slaves at just 11 years old upon his father's death. Over his lifetime, he acquired many more through inheritance, marriage, and purchases. At the peak of his life, Washington controlled over 300 slaves at his Mount Vernon estate. Despite this, his views evolved. By the end of his life, Washington expressed increasing discomfort with the institution of slavery. In a bold move, his will stipulated the eventual emancipation of all his slaves upon his wife's death. This act marked him as the only slave-owning founding father to free his slaves, reflecting a shift that would only begin to take root in the generations to come. Thomas Jefferson, 1743 to 1826. Thomas Jefferson stands as a monumental figure in American history, not only for his role as the author of the Declaration of Independence, but also for his contradictory personal life as a slave owner. At his expansive estate, Monticello, Jefferson held over 600 slaves who worked his land and maintained his household over the decades. Despite his public advocacy for human liberty and equality, Jefferson's private actions reflected a starkly different reality. He maintained a complex relationship with slavery throughout his life, embodying the contradictions of many American founders who preached liberty while practicing bondage. Jefferson's dealings with his slaves, including the widely discussed relationship with Sally Hemings, one of his slaves with whom he fathered children, exemplify the deeply ingrained complexities of race, power, and morality in early American society. James Madison, 1751 to 1836. James Madison, known as the Father of the Constitution, was deeply involved in shaping the early political landscape of the United States, yet he owned slaves throughout his life. Operating his Montpelier estate in Virginia, Madison owned over 100 slaves who toiled in his fields and served in his house. Despite his pivotal role in advocating for a federal system that championed freedoms, Madison never reconciled these ideals with his personal practice of slavery. He did not free any of his slaves in his will, leaving a legacy that highlighted the glaring inconsistencies between his political philosophies and his personal actions. Madison's life reflects the complex interplay of liberty and bondage that characterized the era's political and personal ethics. James Monroe, 1758 to 1831. James Monroe, the fifth president of the United States, is perhaps best known for the Monroe Doctrine, which opposed European colonialism in the Americas. However, like many of his predecessors, Monroe also owned slaves. At his Virginia plantation, Highland, he kept hundreds of slaves who supported his agricultural endeavors. Monroe's presidency included efforts to support the colonization of freed African Americans in Liberia, West Africa. Despite these efforts, Monroe did not free his own slaves, embodying the contradiction of a leader who promoted freedom abroad while denying it at home. His presidency is a study in the contrasts between his political actions and his personal practices, serving as a reminder of the complex narratives that define American history. Andrew Jackson, 1767 to 1845. Andrew Jackson, the seventh president of the United States, is often remembered for his populist rhetoric and advocacy for the common man, but his legacy is also deeply marred by his practice of slavery. Jackson owned as many as 161 slaves, who labored at his Hermitage plantation in Tennessee. Known for his fierce temper and strong will, Jackson's treatment of his slaves was harsh and unyielding, reflecting the brutal reality of chattel slavery. His presidency also saw the tragic Trail of Tears, a policy of Native American removal that he championed, which further demonstrates his complex and often contradictory stance towards human rights. Jackson's legacy as a champion of the common white man starkly contrasts with his oppressive treatment of slaves and Native Americans, offering a lens into the era's contentious and often hypocritical political and social climates. John Tyler, 1790 to 1862. John Tyler, who unexpectedly ascended to the presidency after William Henry Harrison's sudden death, also grappled with the moral and economic implications of slavery. Despite his stance as a staunch supporter of states' rights and a firm advocate for the expansion of slavery into the American territories, Tyler himself was a slave owner. He managed his Virginia plantation using slave labor and benefited directly from the institution throughout his life and political career. Tyler's presidency, though marked by significant political achievements like the annexation of Texas, also entrenched the practice of slavery, reflecting the deep divisions that would eventually lead to the Civil War. James K. Polk, 1795 to 1849. James K. Polk, the 11th President of the United States, is remembered for his significant territorial expansion of the country, acquiring massive lands through the Mexican-American War. Polk was also a slave owner who actively managed his Tennessee plantation from the White House. He used slave labor to build his wealth and maintain his estate, and he did not see the abolition of slavery as politically expedient during his time in office. Polk's expansionist policies contributed to the size of the U.S., but also exacerbated the contentious debate over slavery, as newly acquired territories reignited disputes over whether they should be slaveholding or free, propelling the nation towards sectional conflict. Zachary Taylor, 1784 to 1850. Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States and a national war hero, was also a substantial slave owner. Before his presidency, Taylor commanded troops in the Black Hawk and Second Seminole Wars, earning a reputation as a formidable military leader. Despite his military discipline and leadership, Taylor owned more than 150 slaves on his plantations in Kentucky and Louisiana, and he did not challenge the institution of slavery during his short term in office. Taylor's stance on slavery was seen as moderate. He did not publicly push for its expansion or its restriction, reflecting the delicate balance he tried to maintain in a nation teetering toward division. His sudden death in office left many of his policies, including those regarding slavery, unresolved, contributing to the escalating tensions that would erupt into the Civil War. Andrew Johnson, 1808 to 1875. Andrew Johnson, who became president after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, faced the monumental task of reconstructing the United States after the Civil War. Despite the hopes for a deep transformation of Southern society, Johnson, a Southern Democrat who had owned slaves himself before the war, favored a lenient approach towards the defeated South. He owned a few slaves who were gifted to him by his wife, and though he freed them during the war, his post-war policies did not support the newly freed African Americans' rights. His presidency is often criticized for missing a crucial opportunity to advance racial equality. Johnson's approach to Reconstruction upheld many pre-war racial norms and failed to dismantle the structural legacies of slavery, setting back the progress of civil rights for decades. Ulysses S. Grant, 1822 to 1885. Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th President of the United States and a renowned Union general during the Civil War, had a complex history with slavery. Though he was personally against the institution, he controlled a slave given to him by his father-in-law, but freed him before the war began, a decision not common among those in his position at the time. As president, Grant's policies marked a significant shift from his predecessors. He was a strong advocate for the rights of freed slaves and worked tirelessly to crush the Ku Klux Klan and enforce civil rights laws throughout the South. His administration was pivotal in the protection of African Americans during the Reconstruction era, despite the rampant racism and violence they faced. Grant's transformation from a man who once held a slave to a leader who fought for equal rights underscores the possibility of change and redemption in the complex tapestry of American history. Thank you for watching this episode on CSTU. Understanding our past is crucial for shaping a better future. These stories of presidents who owned slaves show the complexities of American history and the long journey toward true equality. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful looks into history's multifaceted narratives. Check out our other videos to continue exploring with us. See you next time.